You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObscast.com.
Hello, welcome back to episode 99 of the TV Obsessive podcast. My name is Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for TVObsessive.com, and once again joined by Cameron Crane, executive editor for the site. I've got my copy of PC Zone magazine ready to go today. You ready to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a real magazine dude. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
I was reading actually that Charlie Brooker wrote for that magazine back in the day, and that's kind of interesting.
Well, there you go.
Interesting little tidbit. We're going to be talking about the Black Mirror episode Plaything in the latter part of the pod today. Hopefully, people are up to speed on that. First, as per usual, though, we'll just chat a bit about what we've been watching, what's been in the news. It's April 25th. So it's been a few days, but let's start with The Last of Us. Um, Ryan is writing on The Last of Us each week, and of course, this past week was kind of a big deal. I did manage to catch up. I watched it with the world, and I'm glad I did. I did know what was going to happen, but it does seem like a lot of people didn't, and I don't know. There's some unhappiness out there, to say the least.
Yeah, I would say there's some unhappiness and what happened and obviously the plot within the show, which we won't give anything away. There's also I saw a little bit of consternation about how in this major thing that happened that they were not as true to the game as perhaps people would have liked them to be. I mean, I don't know what you expect when you adapt a television show from a video game. They've perhaps done more than most of doing things shot for shot and beat for beat in terms of sticking with the game, but there's just some creative choices you have to make. I sat on my couch afterwards, even having watched and understood what was about to happen, and was just floored by what a good episode it was. So even with the I guess foresight of this shocking thing that took place in the episode, I thought it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I thought it was a good episode, and yeah, I don't know. Again, we don't want to give the spoiler.
Yeah.
It's already a half spoiler to say like there was a big thing. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
remember when Game of Thrones was on with like the Red Wedding and stuff. You were like, oh my God, there's a thing. And it's like, well, and like I was hearing that before I watched that episode. You know what I mean? And it does.
Yeah.
It can feed into where like you are already starting to see it coming because there's something that's gonna be big. So hopefully we're not obliquely spoiling anything for people, but it was a good episode. I'm glad I caught up with it. And I'm curious to see where it goes from here, right? Because I am familiar with what happens I haven't played the game, but I've like
Yeah.
read what happens in the game. And I am curious to see how they tweak it for the TV show, how similar it is, how it's maybe a little different, and so on, right? Like my understanding is even some of the stuff in these first couple of episodes was kind of added, as it were, like not really in the game. And I presume that there are reasons for that, that they're going to play
Yeah,
with some of
I
the
would venture to
backstory.
say, yeah, most of the first two episodes is new content, not within the game. And then of course we have yet to see how they will adapt one game across two seasons. I mean, obviously they're going to stop it at some point and take a year or two off to make the next season. So yeah, lot to be seen of how they go from here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they've got a good kind of stopping point for the season. Hopefully they do. Interesting block of
Yeah.
television on HBO on Sunday nights. We've got The Last of Us and then The Righteous Gemstones, which I don't know if you want to say much about that. Nearing the end of that season and series, which we are fans of. Maybe we'll talk about it more, next week or in 2 weeks or whatever when it's wrapping up. And then the rehearsal. Did you watch the season 2 premiere?
I have seen the rehearsal. Yes, I have consumed a lot of content in addition to just watching this episode. Very close to, if you watch the trailer for the season, very close to what I guess we saw in that first glimpse of what the season would be like. I do want to ask you. You're writing about this show. You and I both
Yeah.
were fans of the first season. Um, this thing that he is doing with what he is digging into and perhaps going to be rehearsing in this season of the show. Do you think he's trying to pass this off as a sort of novel new idea? Basically, the premise is he's looking into the cause of commercial airline disasters and what has happened, how they could be prevented. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this idea 25 years ago. I mean, this has sort of been in like management communication training for a long time. It's like it's not a new idea that he's proposing here without trying to give too much away with what's in the show.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, I think we can or almost have to if we're going to talk about it at all. I'll talk about the fact. I mean, you already mentioned the airline safety thing. Um, I think it's interesting, and I'm really curious to see where it goes over the course of the season because I don't know that he's necessarily presenting this as his novel idea. I mean,
Hmm.
insofar as he's even talking to what's his name, John Goglia, I believe, who was in the on the NTSB and so on,
Yeah.
and pointing to how whatever 20 years ago or whatever they were making recommendations about doing role playing exercises and stuff like that. Um, what I'm more curious about is that line of this being a comedy, but then digging into something really serious. And
Yeah.
like, to what extent is Nathan Fielder genuinely trying to do something helpful, and to what extent is he using this as a comedic premise? And I don't know if I'm a sucker that through one episode, a lot of me feels like, well, no, he's genuine. Yeah, it's a comedy show, but he's also genuine. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
And just that he's using the idea of how he's introduced the show as almost a prop or a stage for this sort of relationship counseling that he tries to do between these. You have to watch it and understand where this is
Yeah, yeah,
going, but
yeah.
it's quite the production.
It's good, and yeah, I'm writing on it week to week, so um no spoilers on this Sunday's episode, but I have seen it. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But it's definitely one of my biggest laughs in the first episode was like 10 minutes in. He's like, well, no, nothing's been funny yet. So there are definitely moments where it feels like the rehearsal more than others. And I was rewatching season one in the past few weeks, and so those comparisons are kind of in my mind where
Yeah.
um so far at least the second season doesn't strike me as funny, so I'm kind of hoping it gets funnier. And I don't know
Yeah.
if that's I don't know how weird I am when I was rewatching season one, that I was just like laughing constantly all the time at like everything. I was like noticing little new things. Like in the one episode, there's this like older woman at the chicken restaurant who's like pretending to eat chicken, and I just found it absolutely hilarious how she was pretending to eat. So like anyway, I love the show, so looking forward to the rest of the run there. We also got
Yeah.
Andor, which I know you're into.
Yes. Andor did come back this week on Tuesday night for season two, the second, and what will inevitably be the final season of Andor. The story behind this is Tony Gilroy, who has written and worked on all of these episodes of this show, went to Disney and Lucasfilm and basically said, I've got 5 seasons worth of ideas for this story, if you can give me that much time. And so they basically said, no, you got 2 seasons. So what he is doing is turning this second season of Andor into 4 3-episode chunks, each a year apart, to sort of represent what his idea would have been for four more
Oh
seasons.
wow.
And so we got the first three that take place a year after the events of Andor season one. And I think the feedback has mostly been similar to the first season, wherein first episodes were incredibly compelling storytelling, slow, detailed, very much setting up what is to happen, but building out what this world and universe are like. It's just the most interesting to me about this show is diving into the detail and minutia of what the Star Wars universe is like. what kind of silverware they're using, what kind of outfits they're trying to choose when they go and meet, people who are their superiors in the empire. Just this level of detail he puts into the show that's truly, truly fascinating. But at the same time, it did set up what I think is to be a pretty propulsive story for the next, like it's only will be on for 3 more weeks, but it's 9 more episodes.
No, wow. It's so odd to me because I hear such good things about Andor. Um, it seems like everyone is saying it is the best Star Wars ever kind of thing. I mean, it's to the point where, as you know, I kind of quit Star Wars a while ago. Um,
Yeah.
but it's to the point where when people talk about Andor, part of me thinks like, oh, well, maybe I should watch just this series, you know? Um, never seen The Mandalorian, and I'm not going to watch any more movies. And
Yeah.
I wasn't even really I didn't even really like Rogue One very much. But still, when people talk about Andor, I think like, oh, well, yeah, maybe I should watch this one. So it's odd that then they don't want to keep it going for 4 or 5 seasons and so on. They don't want to just keep making good
Yeah.
TV, right? They want to keep making stuff that's just like more profitable. I don't know. Like maybe it's not that
Yeah.
popular. It's just critically acclaimed. Is it one of those things? Um, I
I
don't know.
mean,
I've been
it
under the impression that
became
it's quite popular.
Yeah, it became so popular that they actually ran it on ABC and Hulu, after its original first season air because it was getting so much acclaim. Yes, it was nominated for Best Dramatic Series in the Emmys the year it came out. It's hard to say, right? There's not a lot of Star Wars merchandise that's going to be sold from this show. You can't really, make a ride out of it at Disney World, but I do recommend, even for those that are not necessarily Star Wars fans or giving up on Star Wars, all you need to know is that there is an empire and that there's a rebellion being formed to fight them. You have
Yeah,
that information, you've got enough of what you need to really enjoy this show.
it's possible. I might do it. We'll see. You'll hear about it if I do. Right? You'll obviously hear about it if
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
I do have and I'm realizing I have Disney Plus at the moment, so I can watch Doctor Who. Totally forgot to watch Doctor Who this week, so
Oh,
no update on that. I'll have to catch up by next week on the season of Doctor Who. I don't even know what day it's on. I don't know. I get confused when things aren't on like Sunday. I'm just so
yeah,
used to
yeah.
everything being on Sunday and Friday. And so I think Doctor Who might come out on like Tuesdays or something like that. Got to build a habit there for the rest of the season. Um, Speaking of something else that's sort of beloved, at least by some, so the one news item I put on our sheet is about Heartstopper. Um, Apparently, Netflix is going to wrap it up with a movie. And I don't know, they're trying to make that sound good and exciting, but I would imagine Heartstopper fans might be a little bit disappointed that they're not going to get a full season. They're just going to get a movie. Have you ever watched this show at all? I know some people who just absolutely love Heartstopper.
I have never seen Heartstopper, but I will say I am intrigued. So I sort of fell in love with Joe Locke when he was on Agatha All Along. His performance was incredible. I don't know what you think about that show. He was amazing on that show. So I kind of was looking into other things he has done and curious now to watch more of him. And this might be on the top of the list.
Yeah, I haven't watched it either. But again, I have several people I know who really love it. And it seems like from what I've seen of it, and I've seen images and edited articles people have written for the site on it and so on, it seems like it's a very beautiful show. Maybe also
Yeah.
at an emotional type level, and it's based on a series of what graphic novels or whatever. Um, but they are going to wrap it up. You are going to get a movie, but I don't know. I was reading this press release and it says like Heartstopper is going to be bigger than ever. I was like, was a movie really bigger than a series of
Yeah.
episodes? Kind of seems like maybe it's smaller. It might like kind of less. Anyway. Um, but that's coming down the line at some point. Also on Netflix, coming down the line at some point. And another show that I personally have not watched, although I know people love a lot, is Wednesday. Is this something that you are into? You did watch season one?
So I did not watch season one of Wednesday, but another one of these that so many people loved it after it came out. My wife loves this show. I've been very curious to maybe check it out before season two comes out, and we now have a date and a trailer for that second season. This is the show, obviously, about the Addams family, particularly Wednesday Addams, starring Jenna Ortega. There will be a part one and part two, as Netflix often does. Part one will come in August. Part two will come in September. And we'll put a link to this article into the trailer. But yeah, it's just another, not necessarily out of nowhere because it's a big piece of IP with a big name attached to it, but just got so much acclaim. I have not seen it, but am tempted to try to catch up before August. I don't think there are many episodes, maybe just 8 or 9 in the first season.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And the first season came out a while ago, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Like 2020 or something. I don't know. Let's double check on that. I feel like it was quite some time ago when the first season came out. But yeah, it is another one where I heard really good things. It's, maybe similar to Heartstopper. There's some
Mhm.
way in which I feel like it's not exactly right up my alley as the kind of thing that I
Yeah.
would watch, but I've heard good things and it looks pretty good, and I'm not against watching it at all. Just I kind of haven't gotten around to it. Um, this one's maybe a little bit closer for me. I am something of a fan of the old Addams Family movies. But maybe that stood in the way a little bit, though. That in my mind, Wednesday is Christina Ricci.
Yeah, that is true. You and I grew up with Christina Ricci as Wednesday Adams. It's my understanding, you watch this show, you're not going to get the old Addams Family television show. You're not even going to get the movie. There's going to be a more sort of emotional, dramatic component to this, along with some horror comedy stuff that is just sort of typical of Addams Family. But apparently, there's some heart behind it as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out before season two comes out. Further down the line, hopefully this happens. Bill Hader working on a show about Jonestown. Is this what we want for Bill Hader? I suppose. I'm on
Well, I
board.
mean,
Anything Bill Hader does,
so
I'm on board.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, right? So whatever his next thing was gonna be after Barry, I was gonna be on board for. But I did also have to ask. So correct me if I'm wrong. You have not yet watched the studio on Apple TV Plus.
That is correct. I haven't gotten to it yet,
Okay.
but
So why this is so funny to me and why I had to make sure we talked about this is basically the pilot episode of that show. I guess mild spoilers for the first episode of the studio if you haven't seen it. The pilot episode of that show is Seth Rogen being promoted to a head of a studio, a fictional movie studio, and them his tension between trying to work with Martin Scorsese to develop a Jonestown movie
yeah.
and also the sort of financial investors of the studio wanting them to do a big budget movie about Kool-Aid and them trying to like merge the two together, right? Because
Oh,
of the
yeah.
components of the people in Jonestown drinking this thing that ended up killing them. So it's this crazy story, but it's just really funny that now Bill Hader's like, "Yep, I think I'm going to do Jonestown," and sort of overlapping a little bit with this show that Seth Rogen's put together.
Yeah, so coming from Bill Hader and Daniel Zellman, I went and got the other name here, which people might recognize. He's been involved in some other projects like Damages and so on. I don't know what's up with the picture that they put out with this article of Bill Hader either. He looks like he just woke up and he's not happy to be awake. He's just this grumpy picture. I don't know what's up with that. Um, but yeah, I mean, this could be really interesting. Um, in terms of I mean, presumably people know what happened with Jonestown in terms of the mass suicide, drink that phrase drinking the Kool-Aid and all of that, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I'll have to check out the studio at some point because it does sound entertaining.
Yeah, no, it's just very, very, very funny that was the that was the plot of that episode. And then, yeah, we're going to get a Bill Hader version of Jamestown, which again, I will be all in on.
Yeah. Um, let's see. You want to talk about subtitles?
Yeah,
They're going
last
to
thing I
tweak the
put on here,
subtitles.
I just found this interesting. I think you and I have had this conversation before. I am a watch with subtitles person. You've said that you sometimes do that, or you are a subtitles person.
I entirely am and have been for like 25 years. One of the reasons why
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you before, I have this weird tendency where I actually prefer to watch things on my computer. Like I have a TV over here with cable.
Mhm.
And this is actually part of the reason that I can't seem to get subtitles on this television. I don't know. I mean, presumably there's a way to get captions on the television, right? But
Yeah.
I've not been able to figure it out. It's one of those things where there's two remotes, right? There's one for the TV and there's one for the cable box. And I pushed the buttons on both of them, and neither of them have made captions come up. So, um, yeah, I definitely prefer having subtitles. And I kind of like this tweak, right? Because apparently, what Netflix is going to offer are subtitles just for the dialogue without the action cues, if I'm understanding this correctly. Um,
Yeah.
I
So
might
so
be on
nothing that
board for that.
says, yeah, nothing that says phone ringing or I think Netflix has gotten a lot of I think funny commentary, particularly around Stranger Things and other shows for like, flesh crushing or just sort of these sounds that go along with some of the things that they're doing. So if you want just the actual words that are being said on the screen, you can now, starting with the show You, the final season of the show You, you can choose to do just the words and not the, as you said, the audio cues from the show.
The downside of this, though, Ryan, it would mean that if you watch Twin Peaks: The Return with the subtitles on, but not the sound cue things we're talking about, you'd never be on board with ominous whooshing, you know, which is it like occurs quite frequently in that series to the point where I
Yeah.
think it's John Thorne like made the title of his book about Twin Peaks Return. Ominous whooshing.
Yeah, that I
Um,
remember there was a lot of social media chatter around. I forget what episode it was of Stranger Things, something about wet flesh descending or just something. I don't know, but just some very odd cues that they give to their shows.
yeah, it's crackling flesh noises. Okay, but like if you actually can't hear it, then they're doing their best. They're doing their best.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Um,
Anyway, just a funny sort of update that they're making to their service, starting with that final season of the one particular show.
yeah, and I think it's out. I think it came out like yesterday, the final
It
season of
is.
you.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Um, Hopefully we'll get together something on TVObsessive.com about it at some point. We have some articles on the previous seasons, and we'll see. Is where it stands at this point, in terms of whether it's going to come through to have something fun. Because this is the end of you, so it might be down the line a little bit, but hopefully we'll have something kind of on the series finale and all of that coming down the pike. If you want to keep an eye out for that. But okay, so let's talk about Plaything,
Yeah.
continuing our weekly coverage of Black Mirror, which it does start to feel like it's been forever since Black Mirror season 7 came out. It's been 2 weeks. Right? It's literally been 2 weeks from yesterday. But we're going to talk about Plaything. It was the fourth episode in season 7. So spoilers will be on the table for that. Also for Bandersnatch, right? Because there's some references to Bandersnatch. And
Hmm.
we'll pop a little bit of music in here and be back with you in just about 10 seconds.
Okay, we're here to talk about the fourth episode of the seventh season of Black Mirror, Plaything, written by Charlie Brooker, directed by David Slade. In this episode, a writer and game reviewer for PC Zone magazine named Cameron is confronted by the police after shoplifting, and he's ultimately arrested because he is suspected of killing an unidentified person. While with the police, Cameron talks about his past with game designer Colin Rittman, who we met in the Bandersnatch episode, and the game Colin designed called Thronglets. Thronglets is Colin's attempt to make a digital life form. It's a game where he has coded them to grow and to evolve over time. After Cameron steals the game from Colin, his connection to the Thronglets continues to grow, gets stronger. It gets even stronger still after taking LSD, which allows which allows him to understand their communication and begin to communicate with them. When a guest at his house named Lump kills the Thronglets, Cameron murders him, hides the body, and over the next few decades, Cameron builds up the game and his connection to the Thronglets, which leads him to surgically placing a port in his brain so he can continue to evolve that connection. During his interrogation with the police, Cameron won't say who the body is until he gets a piece of paper and a pen. When the police give him these, Cameron draws a code that the computer servers then pick up. This allows the Thronglets to take over the country's emergency broadcast system and send a noise that reprograms all human brains in an effort to, quote, eliminate conflict. Um, Ominous ending. Interesting tangent from Bandersnatch. I guess we should say a lot of places we can start here, but there are some connections back to that previous interactive episode.
Yeah, there are. And thinking about your summary as you were reading through it definitely at least sounds like you're taking Cameron's word for it in terms of what happens in this episode. That was one of the things I wanted to talk
Yes.
about. For example, he takes LSD and then he can understand what the Thronglets are saying perfectly, and then at the end, the Thronglets are going to merge with humanity or whatever. And that's one thing I do ultimately really want to talk about is how do we interpret that ending? And I guess we can go ahead and start there since I already brought it up. Um, I don't know. What do you think? One of the things that struck me, I wrote on this episode, if people want to go find my article on TVObscast.com on it. But one of the things that struck me as I was doing that is I realized that there's ambiguity here, and certainly there's a question of whether we should believe his account, you know what I mean? Or like, is this just a wildly delusional guy? But something happens at the end. And I found
Yes.
myself feeling like, well, it almost makes more sense to me to believe him than to spin out some alternate interpretation. So I don't know. What do you think there?
Yeah, so there's sort of the path where we have this story told from the point of view after he takes LSD, and then what would have happened if he had never done that? Would have we continued down the same path? We've gotten to the same conclusion. So certainly there is the perspective there that Cameron is an unreliable narrator, particularly after he begins the LSD use. However, I think I'm with you, where I tend to believe that this is what actually happened because, most of the things at least is either his recollection of what he has remembered from the past, okay, or his point of view from within the police station. But then I believe at the end, we break outside of that and see other people that are not in that room, they're not from his past, sort of have the rollback eyes and the, whatever happens to them through the Thronglet. So it seems like there might be like this is what actually is happening, not just in his head.
Yeah. So, but is it what he says is happening, right? Because
That's
there's the
right.
background
Yeah.
question of whether the Thronglets are like really a digital life form. Um, you mentioned the LSD, which he says allows him to understand and communicate with them, and then they ask for equipment
Mhm.
upgrades. So, I mean, at the very least, I believe that he did all of that. But
Yes.
are the Thronglets really alive? I mean, yeah, one other thing that I think we have to bear in mind here is he was doing this stuff for like 25 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Um, was he taking acid every day for 25 years? I think so.
How is he still functional after all that time,
Well, I mean, that's, yeah, he almost seems more sane than you would expect, but um and his claim, that's part of what's interesting too, because it does seem to track in a way. His claim is that by merging with the Thronglets, he's gained this confidence and he's
Yeah.
calm and this lack of tension that he wants to share with others and so on. So I think that the if you will deflationary reading would be that this guy is just insane, basically, and has been laboring under this delusion for 25 years that the computer program he has running is like sentient life. Um, when I guess maybe it isn't, but he has been doing something that he has now carried out, right? And
Yeah.
the question would be, if it's not a matter at the end of that signal transmitting the thronglets to humanity's brains to eliminate conflict or whatever. If that's not the case, then what exactly did he do to everyone?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's a reading of this where he became, I mean, we saw whatever we can believe from what he told us about his past, he became a drugged out, murdering, just sort of a complete devotee to, I do nothing but spend all day long focused on my LSD use in this game, but eventually his connection to the Thronglets, as he was able to evolve that, he became, I don't know, more enlightened, more of a, another level of human, or another level of evolution. So now, they're going to attempt to do that to everyone else, and he sort of rose above this, his murder and his drug use and all these things, but yeah, I just there are not just two, there are multiple paths I think you can take here to read the ending.
Yeah. And then, okay, well, then that's part of where I think we can think about the connections to Bandersnatch, right? You see Colin. I love that character a lot. Like one of my favorite characters in all of Black Mirror. So I was happy about that. We also see his boss, Mohan. So clearly, if we're thinking about Bandersnatch and that question of whether this canonicalizes an ending of Bandersnatch, it would have to be one where those two don't die, right? Because there are paths in Bandersnatch where one or both of them die. There are also paths in Bandersnatch where
Yeah.
Tuckersoft goes out of business. So the video game company Tuckersoft still exists.
Yes.
We're told that Colin had some level of breakdown or whatever. He leaves the room to take his meds, but then we're told later in the episode he has another breakdown and he erased the
Yeah.
game so that the copy that Caemeron has is the only copy that exists, I guess, and that's significant. Anyway, I mean, one of the things they played with in Bandersnatch through Colin was the idea of multiple realities and many
Right.
worlds theory kind of thing and so on. So I don't know, we could just read it along those lines, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be I don't think that it is definitively making a certain ending of Bandersnatch canon. So it's an open question how we think about that kind of parallel world question, I suppose.
Yeah, and I also think to your point, there is, I think, many worlds of an ending of this particular episode, but there's also the path of, yeah, I don't actually know, is this a reliable telling of the story based on what Cameron did for so many years, or if this did not happen, there was another path that he could have taken. So without it being interactive, it certainly is a very mentally interactive exercise, right? To think about what are the different opportunities here.
Yeah, for sure. And all the stuff with Lump, let's talk about that more. There's another, I mean, it's almost more of an illusion to Bandersnatch when he kills Lump, because he hits him with the ashtray, which I
Yeah.
don't know if you recall in Bandersnatch, that was a kill shot move with Stefan's father. At least
Yes.
that was one possibility, right? Where when you chose kill dad, it was you hit him with the ashtray and he just died. So that's in there, and I thought that was noteworthy. But then here, Lum doesn't directly die, and then he strangles him on the floor. Then he chops up his body, which was also one of the options in Bandersnatch, and it was actually the option that you quote unquote should choose for the game to be
Yeah.
successful. Um, for whatever that's worth. But I was also thinking, I mean, I don't know how to put this question exactly. There was I'll just put it in like the bluntest way and not worry about sounding like a monster. There was at least some part of me in watching that scene that felt like Lump had it coming. What do you think?
Well, I think that the show does that. It connects you. You have this long-term connection to Colin. So in a way, the sense of like this is the game that he birthed, right? You then develop this connection with Cameron, and then you're sort of rooting for, in some weird way for Cameron to succeed and build this thing and help these Thronglets grow and evolve. And then someone comes in and starts taking their life away. And yeah, you think, okay, well, this is not, this is, I'm now more empathetic with the game designers and the Thronglets in the game than I certainly am with Lump. So yeah, let's get under the, that Bandersnatch uniform or universe and start chopping them up. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in part because it was sucking me into the premise that the Thronglets really were alive and all of that, which from
Yeah,
a more
exactly.
detached point of view, I still have to think that's questionable, but it's interesting to play with the idea of what if they really are, right? Because Colin says he programmed them to evolve, and I don't know, man, if we're talking about
Yes.
Cameron's running that program constantly, you know, and upgrading the hardware. And so I don't know. There's an interesting idea to play with there. But regardless of all of that, part of me still thinks, this guy came into his bedroom, invades his privacy by, opening the door to go into his bedroom, takes the blanket off of his computer monitor and starts messing with it. It's almost like that invasion of privacy and so on. I don't want to go so far as to say I think that
Yeah.
justifies murder, but like it kind of felt like I was on board with it enough within the context of the episode to feel like, at the very least, that Lump did something really, really wrong here. And the voiceover with Peter Capaldi, who's great in this, talking in that moment about the kind of brutality of humanity and how it, I mean, I don't know what all I want to say about this, but I did think it was interesting to think about how much the fact that Lump's first impulse was to start killing the
Mhm.
Thronglets felt completely plausible.
See, I think it was something that made sense to me to look at Lump as someone who came into a situation they didn't understand, didn't have the background, didn't have the time spent or the emotional energies put into this game. And so it made sense that he goes in there looking to, okay, well, it makes sense. You find a game, what's the thing I need to accomplish in this game? And he just starts killing them. It goes back to what Colin was saying about what he feels is often the purpose of video games, which is to create conflict. And he was trying to do the opposite of that. And so Lump, just being the representation of someone that's going into something new and just trying to kill or eliminate whatever the obstacle is, it almost makes sense that that's what he would do.
Yeah. And that was interesting. Again, I love Colin, but some of his lines of it, it's not a game,
Yeah.
why do you need a goal? Um, of course, I mean, it does seem to kind of have a goal to help the Thronglets thrive or whatever, and it's interesting how they set this in the mid 1990s. And one thing I was looking into when I was writing on it was the Tamagotchi,
Mm.
which they made this set like a year before Tamagotchi came out, I guess. Um, whatever that's worth, they don't mention it, but it's something I thought about because I remember being in high school and um, lots of my female friends in particular carrying around little Tamagotchis all the time.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it is like it's weird because there kind of are games like this at this point, right? So is it a game? Does the game require conflict? Is there a goal? You know, um, to what extent is it Cameron creating a certain goal? I don't know. It's all interesting, and I guess that central question is like, are they actually alive? Is he actually communicating with them? Did he actually merge with them? I mean, the guy put a port in the back of his head. He's done something, right? So I
Yeah.
think what has he done and what did he do at the very end? But I do like how the
Yeah.
episode leaves that as a question at the end.
Yeah. I did wonder, particularly as we talk about the LSD use, this idea of doing surgery on yourself so that you can connect your brain into your computer? Was that of just a product of something that he felt because of the drugs, and he's actually communicating with them, or oh, my drugged out state is telling me to do this, and so that's why I ended up drilling a hole in the back of my head and plugging in to my computer.
I mean, like, I don't think that would work.
No.
So yeah, I mean, really, we should be maybe a little bit more hesitant to just accept his version of events, because I don't think, even though at some conceptual level it does make sense to say something like, oh, well, the brain is a computer and all of that kind of thing. I don't think that you could, create that kind of port in the back of your head and, plug
Right.
your computer into it and it would do anything at all, right? Um,
Well, I mean, we now have Plaything and the Matrix. So if those two things say it can be done, then I assume it can be done, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's similar to that, but I mean, yes, I do think, and with the LSD in there, it's really is playing on that line, and it probably, if we want to be, the one thing about what's plausible or realistic, it probably is along the lines of this guy took a bunch of acid and suffered
Yeah.
under delusions, and yes, he made the sport in the back of his head. Um, but no, the throng lists are just computer programming. Maybe got more and more sophisticated. Um, but then somehow he does, through this noise, knock people out and their eyes like roll back into their heads and something happens there. That's it.
Yeah.
But
That's the thing. That, I mean, that's the strongest evidence for he actually did something to at least the group of people that can hear this emergency broadcast system. And yeah, what has he done? That's that. I mean, I kind of enjoy the fact that we don't exactly know. All we get is a bloody smile of his, offering to help somebody up and say, let's get going.
yes, yes, I'm glad you said that because I agree. I don't want to know, to be clear. Um, he does say that this is going to be global, right?
Hmm.
So if you believe him, then this has been transmitted to every device globally, not just in that, small area. But I mean, what I'm saying is I don't want like a follow-up to this episode that tells us.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't. So if you're listening, Charlie Brooker,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Which is why I thought it was interesting to see. I just made a quick reference of this, but over the course of that time, to show the passage of time, you see him buying, game systems and iPhones and virtual reality headsets, and just all the latest, newest things that are now all just so interconnected to one another. So yeah, I mean, the idea that he could hold up a QR code and impact the the globe by penetrating a computer system. Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense to us now.
Yeah. And you mentioned there's a QR code in the middle of the credits of the episode, and I followed it. But I don't think you even need the QR code to find the game. There is a game, a phone
Yes.
thronglets game that they put out as a tie into this. Um, I still haven't made any time to mess with it, really. It's not exactly my thing to like play games on my phone, I guess. Um, but that's out there. I don't know if others have. I saw some reviews and things like that, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know that there's anything super meaningful about it, other than it's just like a tie-in game kind of thing that they
Yeah.
made.
Yeah, I made it as far as the app store, but I don't know, call me a Luddite or paranoid or whatever, but I did not I did not download the game onto my phone just in case, just in case.
I downloaded the game onto my phone, and then in order to play it, you have to log into Netflix.
Oh, okay.
And I was struggling to remember my Netflix login because I don't normally use Netflix on my phone.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that was my stumbling block and has remained so. Like, I mean, like, of course I could figure out my Netflix login,
yeah,
um, but my computer remembers it. Like my web browser just remembers it.
yeah,
And I
right.
mean, it was even like which email address did I use? That was the thing. It's not just a password. It's like, which email address did I use for this? So
Yeah.
anyway, not here nor there. Anything else you want to say about Plaything?
No, I found this very, very interesting, very entertaining. As we've talked about on some of these episodes before, it's the ones with that have these ambiguous endings are often the best, and I put this in that category.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I mean, it's also tight. I mean, I think it's maybe the shortest episode of the season, which I
Yeah.
appreciate. But it didn't need to be any longer. I like the structure of it, which we didn't talk about a whole lot, but I think Peter Capaldi is great as for this kind of structure, right? Because Peter Capaldi is really good as the storyteller in the interrogation room,
Yes.
and then doing the voiceover as we see the flashbacks and all of that. So yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. We've got two more to wrap up season 7. So next week we're going to talk about Eulogy, which you wrote on for the site. If you want to go and read that, starring Paul Giamatti. That was a good episode. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with you next week. In the meantime, thanks as always for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do leave us a good rating, review, all of that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate it. And check out TVObscast.com. There are articles on every episode of Black Mirror there, if that's what you're looking for, as well as on all sorts of other TV shows. You can follow the site on social media, search for TV Obsessive, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. See you next week for Eulogy.